My husband thought I'd never wake up. While I lay there hooked to machines, he emptied our joint bank account, tried to transfer the house into his name, and even threw a private engagement party with his mistress. He made choices I was never meant to hear. But I did. I heard everything, the whispers, the lies, the betrayal. And when I finally opened my eyes, I said nothing. I just waited. If you were in my place, what would you do? Leave a comment, subscribe, and get ready, because this is the story I've waited a lifetime to tell. To the outside world, Aurelia Vaughn had the kind of life people envied. She was a well-respected pediatrician, lived in a beautiful colonial-style home in Boulder, Colorado, and was married to Grayson Thorne, an architect with charm ambition and the kind of smile that made strangers trust him instantly. Together they looked perfect, polished, untouchable. For years, Aurelia believed in that illusion, too. Grayson had always been thoughtful. He left her love notes in the kitchen, sent flowers to her office on stressful days, and talked about the future as if nothing could ever go wrong. Italy, a vineyard, long walks through olive groves when they were older. It sounded like a dream she could live in forever. But lately the dream had started to crack. It began with subtle changes, things that could be explained away if she didn't look too closely. His phone was always on silent. His laptop, once left casually open on the kitchen counter, was now locked with a password. One afternoon she reached for his tablet to check a shared calendar. It asked for facial recognition. When she asked about it, Grayson chuckled. New client protocols, NDA stuff, nothing personal. Nothing personal. But something about the way he said it made her feel cold. Then came the receipt. She found it by accident, tucked inside an old book on their shared office shelf, a Cartier gift slip for a bracelet. Inscribed in handwriting that wasn't hers, "You're the real dream." Gee, the name on the receipt, Vanessa Lowe. Aurelia didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't even confront him. She just closed the book, slid the receipt back where she found it, and smiled when Grayson came home that night, saying he'd been stuck in a late meeting. After that, she began noticing more 2 wine glasses in the sink on a night she'd worked a double shift, a strand of platinum blonde hair on the guest bathroom counter, a missed call on the home phone from someone listed only as V. Still, she didn't say a word. She watched. Grayson had grown distant. Still charming when they were around friends or at company events, but in private his attention wandered. He was always checking his phone, responding to urgent clients, and leaving early for site visits. She tried to justify it. He was stressed. Maybe he was going through something. Maybe she had missed a signal along the way. But deep down, she knew better. You don't leave lipstick on someone else's wine glass by accident. She focused on her work instead. The clinic was expanding. Her patients loved her. She was mentoring new doctors. She had a purpose outside of her marriage, and for a while that was enough to keep her grounded. Then came the migraines. They started as a dull throb behind her eyes and grew worse by the day. Blinding flashes, nausea, fatigue. She chalked it up to burnout. She'd seen enough doctors do the same, but deep down, she felt something was wrong. The last thing she remembered clearly was sitting at her desk reviewing a patient file when the room tilted sideways. Her pen slipped from her fingers. She tried to call for help, but the words wouldn't come. Everything went dark. She didn't die, but she didn't wake up either. The doctors called it a coma. Her body was alive, but her mind, well, they assumed it was somewhere else. Disconnected. Dormant. They were wrong. Aurelia was still there. Trapped inside her body, unable to move, speak, or respond, but aware. Fully aware. She could hear everything. The machines, the doctors, the nurses whispering updates, and Grayson. He came to the hospital almost every day, not out of love or guilt, but to make calls. He thought she couldn't hear him. He thought she was gone. But Aurelia listened. Closely. Carefully. And what she heard would change everything. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and artificial air. Machines hummed steadily beside Aurelia's bed, their rhythm a cruel reminder that her body lived, even if no one believed her mind did. But Aurelia was awake. Not in the way the nurses checked for, not with blinking or reflexes. She was trapped behind still eyes, frozen limbs, and a silent scream no one could hear. The doctors called it a coma, but she could hear every sound, every conversation, every whispered secret they thought she'd never know. And Grayson. He came less and less, and when he did, it wasn't for her. In the first few days, he'd play the grieving husband well. He cried for the nurses, asked endless questions about her condition, and made sure to hold her hand long enough to be noticed. But Aurelia knew better. His touch was shallow, his words rehearsed. And then one afternoon she heard the words that cracked everything open. "We should talk about moving the house into my name. You know, just in case." Grayson wasn't talking to a doctor. He was on the phone, standing 2 feet from her bedside. His voice was low but clear. "If something happens, if she doesn't make it, I can't have things tied up in probate. You understand? It's better to do it now." There was a pause. "No, she has no living will, I checked." He sounded so calm, so calculated, as if she were already gone. Aurelia wanted to scream, to rip the IVs from her arms and demand answers, but her body wouldn't respond. She was paralyzed, watching a life unravel around her, powerless to stop it. The next day, he brought in a notary. She heard the shuffle of papers, the clack of a pen, the lie he told the nurse that she had authorized everything verbally before the collapse. Later that week, a woman's voice entered the room, soft, sultry, and entirely unwelcome. She looked so peaceful. "You sure it's okay to be here?" Aurelia knew that voice even before the woman said her name, Vanessa. Vanessa Lowe, the woman from the Cartier receipt, from the wine glass, from the half-smile Grayson wore in the mirror on nights he thought no one was watching. "Relax," Grayson said. "She's not waking up." Aurelia's chest tightened. Her heart rate monitor began to spike. Vanessa laughed. "You're cold." "I'm realistic," he replied. They spoke for another 10 minutes about lawyers' money-securing assets and how long the doctors were willing to keep her on the machines. Grayson said it like it was a business transaction, a cost-benefit analysis. And Vanessa. She kissed his cheek on her way out. Over the next week, Aurelia heard everything. She learned Grayson had already begun selling off their stocks, that he'd quietly moved thousands of dollars into a private account under his name, that the house her childhood home passed down from her grandmother had been listed for sale without her signature. But worst of all, he was planning a party. Something small, just a gathering. Close friends, you and me. Official. Those were his words to Vanessa. Official. Engaged. He was going to propose to another woman while Aurelia lay unconscious in a hospital bed. It wasn't grief, it wasn't confusion, it was premeditated. He thought he'd won. That she was gone. That he could rewrite her life, erase her from it, and smile his way through the obituary. But Aurelia was still there. And she was counting every breath, every lie, every betrayal, because when she woke up, and she would wake up, she would make sure he regretted ever thinking she was gone. It happened just after sunrise on a quiet Tuesday. The nurse was adjusting Aurelia's IV when she noticed a flicker. Not a spasm. Not an involuntary twitch, but a blink, slow, steady, intentional. For the first time in over 3 weeks, Aurelia Vaughn had moved. Alarms were called, doctors rushed in, monitors lit up. Grayson didn't answer his phone. By mid-morning, Aurelia could squeeze a hand. By noon, she managed a whisper, dry, strained, barely audible. "Water." Her doctors called it miraculous. "You're lucky to be alive," they said. "We weren't sure if you'd ever come back." But Aurelia didn't feel lucky. She felt sharpened. Still she nodded, smiled weakly, said little. She let them believe she was foggy, confused, disoriented. A woman clawing her way out of darkness with no memory of what had happened. When Grayson finally arrived 8 hours after her awakening, he stumbled through the hospital room door holding a bouquet of pale roses and an apology already forming on his tongue. "I came as soon as I heard he lied." His eyes scanned her face, searching for clarity, suspicion recognition. Aurelia blinked slowly and murmured, "How long?" His shoulders relaxed. "Almost a month. You've been through hell, but you're back now. That's all that matters." She let him kiss her forehead. Let him sit at her bedside. Let him talk about love, about miracles, about second chances. She said nothing about Vanessa. Nothing about the notary. Nothing about the engagement party scheduled for Saturday, which she knew had been hastily canceled just hours after news of her recovery spread. Instead, Aurelia stared out the window and pretended to be grateful. The next few days were routine physical therapy, light meals, endless check-ins from well-meaning staff. But beneath the surface, she was documenting everything. Grayson brought takeout and watched her sleep. He answered every question with pre-packaged sympathy. And he never once mentioned the house the accounts, or the fact that he'd legally tried to sever their marriage while she was unconscious. He believed he'd gotten away with it, that Aurelia had returned only to the surface of their life, not to its rotten core. He had no idea the woman in that bed was not the same woman who collapsed at her office weeks ago. One night, as Grayson slept, slouched in a chair beside her, Aurelia asked a nurse for her phone. Just for a moment. Just to feel normal again. The nurse smiled. Of course. Let me disinfect it. When the phone reached her hands, Aurelia went straight to her private email, one Grayson didn't know about. She sent a message to someone she hadn't spoken to in years. Subject urgent. Marcus, it's Aurelia. I need a lawyer. One I can trust. Please don't respond here. Just come. Quietly. Marcus Bellamy. Old friend, former law school classmate, now a seasoned attorney with no love for Grayson and an excellent memory for secrets. 2 days later, Marcus showed up at the hospital posing as a cousin. You've been through it, he said gently, handing her a sealed envelope. But you're not alone. Inside copies of their bank records, the forged transfer documents, and most damning, a recorded voicemail Vanessa had left on Grayson's phone 2 weeks into Aurelia's coma. I still can't believe we're doing this. You're sure the paperwork's safe once the house is in your name? We'll talk about next steps. Just don't let her come back and ruin things. Aurelia read it all in silence, her expression unreadable. Her fingers didn't shake. I want everything documented, she said. Every lie, every dollar, every piece of what he thought he could take from me. Marcus nodded. You're planning to confront him. Aurelia looked down at her hands. They felt stronger now. Steady. And for the first time in weeks, so did her voice. Not yet, she said. First, I want him to think he's safe. The discharge was quiet. No welcome home banners. No family crowding the driveway. Just Grayson's SUV and the sound of gravel crunching beneath the tires as they pulled into the garage of the house he'd tried to steal. He insisted on carrying her bag, cooked dinner, lit candles, played music. To new beginnings, he said, raising a glass of wine. Aurelia toasted him with water. She smiled. Said all the right things. Told him she was grateful. Told him she needed time. Told him, let's not talk about the past. Let's focus on healing. Grayson ate up every word. The next morning, he returned to work. Vanessa didn't come by, at least not while Aurelia was watching, but her presence was still everywhere. A silk scarf under the couch. A tube of lipstick in the guest bathroom drawer. Perfume soaked into a sweater that wasn't Aurelia's. She made a mental list. She wasn't done collecting yet. Each day, Aurelia played the part of the recovering wife. She shuffled slowly through the house, leaned heavily on her cane, and winced at every other step. Grayson watched her closely at first, but once he saw her struggle to open a jar of peanut butter, his vigilance faded. He began working late again. That was exactly what she wanted. With Marcus's help, Aurelia assembled a full timeline. The date Grayson filed for divorce, the wire transfers, the fake notary who witnessed a signature she never gave, and most importantly, the planned engagement party complete with receipts from the caterer, the florist, and a rental company that had already been paid in full. It was all laid out in folders organized by color and timestamp. Marcus called it overkill. Aurelia called it justice. But evidence wasn't enough. She needed witnesses, so she began inviting people over. Not for revenge, not yet, but to plant the idea that everything was fine. First came Juliet Maddox, her oldest friend, and one of the few who never liked Grayson. You're handling this so well, Juliet said, sipping tea. I'm not sure I could have survived what you've been through. Aurelia gave a quiet laugh. Some days I'm still not sure I have. Then came Vanessa's assistant, a naive 20-something named Mallory, who worked at Grayson's firm part-time. Aurelia bumped into her at a juice bar and invited her over for a wellness chat. Mallory babbled nervously and mentioned things she shouldn't have: Grayson's recent weekend at the Lake Vanessa's gift registry, and something about an architect's wife who doesn't even know the wedding's been rescheduled. Aurelia thanked her for coming and handed her a gift basket, then added the transcript to the file. By the end of the second week, Aurelia had everything: the financial evidence, the legal proof, the audio files, and enough accidental witnesses to back every claim. All that was left was the moment. She chose Grayson's annual foundation gala, a black tie event he hosted every spring filled with donors, architects, city officials, and this year, Vanessa, who had been quietly reinstated as the event planner. It would be the perfect crowd: wealthy, reputable, judgmental. Aurelia confirmed her RSVP 3 days before the event. Grayson looked surprised when she told him. "You really feel up for it?" "I think it's time," she said. He nodded slowly. "Good. It'll be nice to have you there again." On the night of the gala, she wore a simple black dress, elegant understated, with her hair pulled into a sleek chignon. No cane, no signs of weakness. Her posture made people stare. And Grayson froze when he saw her walk into the ballroom unaided. "You look incredible," he said. Aurelia kissed his cheek. "I feel stronger every day." Vanessa arrived, late blonde curls, gold dress, and a wide smile that vanished the moment she saw Aurelia standing next to Grayson at the head table. "What is she doing here?" she hissed at Grayson during a lull in music. He gave a weak shrug. "She wanted to come." What was I supposed to say? Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "She looks different." She did, because Aurelia wasn't hiding anymore. Just before dessert, the lights dimmed. Grayson stepped up to the mic. He gave his usual speech about architecture legacy and the importance of building futures. Then he began thanking donors, applauding the staff, making jokes. And just as he reached the end of his remarks, the projector screen behind him flickered to life. Not the slideshow Vanessa had designed, but a folder icon, labeled "In Case She Woke Up." Grayson turned around. Aurelia stood beside the projector, remote in hand. "Mind if I share something real?" she said. The crowd turned silent. Vanessa stepped back. Grayson didn't move. The first slide was the divorce petition signed and dated 2 weeks into her coma. Then came the bank transfers. Then the house deed. Then a photo of the engagement ring Grayson had ordered for Vanessa next to a time-stamped invoice. Finally, the audio. Vanessa's voicemail, crystal clear, unmistakable. By the time it ended, Grayson's face had gone white. Vanessa was already halfway to the exit, and the crowd whispers turned to gasps. Gasps turned to silence. And then silence turned into something worse: reputation collapse. Aurelia stepped down without another word. She didn't need to scream. She didn't need to beg for sympathy. She simply walked past Grayson, past the stunned audience, past the security guard at the door, and smiled. Grayson's downfall was swift. The night after the gala, news of the scandal spread faster than either he or Vanessa could contain. The leaked audio went viral. Social media lit up with hashtags. Local news stations looped clips from the gala speech, followed by commentary on marital fraud, medical ethics, and financial manipulation. Within 48 hours, Grayson's clients began backing out. Sponsors dropped his name. A public statement from his firm claimed he was taking a leave of absence. By the end of the week, he was no longer an employee, let alone the CEO. Vanessa tried to scrub her presence from the narrative. She deleted accounts, skipped interviews, and issued a statement claiming she had no idea Aurelia was still in recovery. But it was too late. She'd been the mistress who planned a wedding over a coma patient's body, and no amount of PR could erase that. Aurelia, on the other hand, remained quiet. She made no media appearances, no interviews, no open letters or dramatic tell-alls. She let the evidence speak. Let the truth settle where it belonged, in public records, not tabloid headlines. When asked for a comment by a major news outlet, her lawyer Marcus simply said, "My client is focused on healing and protecting what was nearly taken from her." Behind closed doors, Aurelia was anything but passive. She filed a lawsuit for fraud and emotional abuse, backed by medical affidavits, financial statements, and recordings. Grayson had little ground to stand on. His attempt to transfer property during her coma alone was enough to trigger criminal investigation. The notary fake. The engagement documents forged. The financial moves clearly premeditated. The DA's office opened a formal case. Vanessa, under pressure, offered to testify in exchange for immunity. Grayson's lawyer attempted a settlement. Aurelia refused. "He gambled that I wouldn't survive," she told Marcus. "Let him sit with the consequences." 3 months later, a judge froze Grayson's assets. Vanessa disappeared from the city entirely, and Aurelia reclaimed her home legally, publicly, and without apology. But she didn't stay. She moved into a modest apartment in the heart of the city, not because she had to, but because she wanted a fresh start that didn't carry the stench of betrayal. She returned to her clinic on her own terms, took on fewer patients, started a new program for women recovering from psychological abuse and medical trauma. She began mentoring younger doctors again, not just in medicine, but in resilience. One afternoon, while sorting through old boxes, she found a letter. It was one she'd written to herself during rehab weeks after the hospital, when her body still shook with fatigue, and her hands wouldn't always obey. The handwriting was shaky. "You survived what was meant to destroy you. Don't waste your second chance making them hurt. Make them irrelevant." Aurelia smiled. Grayson was already irrelevant. Months passed. Her lawsuit moved forward. She rarely spoke his name. Then, one morning, Marcus forwarded her an email. Grayson had accepted a plea deal to avoid a trial. He would lose his license, pay restitution, serve probation under public scrutiny. It wasn't jail, but it was enough. Enough to stain his reputation permanently. Enough to make sure no one else would be fooled by his carefully crafted charm. Later that night, Juliet visited. They sat on Aurelia's small balcony, wine in hand, the city glowing beneath them. "You could have destroyed him completely," Juliet said. "Why stop where you did?" Aurelia didn't answer right away. She looked at the skyline, at the quiet hum of life that didn't ask for headlines or victory speeches. "Because I don't need to destroy him," she said finally. "He did that all by himself. I just turned on the lights." Grayson's name faded from the media after a year. Vanessa never resurfaced in the same circles. Aurelia continued building not out of vengeance, but clarity. Her work expanded. Her reach grew. The foundation she started, called The Still Voice, offered legal and emotional resources to women who felt voiceless in crisis. People praised her strength, called her inspiring. But Aurelia never thought of herself as strong. Only ready for peace. Ready for real life, and ready finally to write the story of her life on her own terms. Some betrayals cut so deep they silence you, but when you find your voice again, you don't need to scream, you just need to be heard.